Hello everybody, this is Verdi Arbusto. I am with the Schumann Resonance Harmonics channel on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everyone's comments, your feedback, your love, your support. It's Wednesday the 28th of October, almost at trick-or-treat season, where the veils are the thinnest, the veils between the worlds are the thinnest, and true goblins and ghouls tend to come out of the ground at night. And for those who are not prepared, it can be meddlesome, we'll say. So, on that cheery note, this is kind of a part B, I guess, of the visual light spectrum, the wavelength of the visual light spectrum. Okay. And our stated clear intention is to discuss the spectrogram of the Schumann resonance. Ultimately, this is the section where we are really truly looking into what is going on with the Schumann resonance spectrogram. Pardon me, I got a frog in my throat here. Or maybe it's a cricket, I don't know. Anyway, all right. So we're working on the perception of the human eye. It can perceive the wavelength of light spectrum falling between between 380 and 750 nanometers. Okay, now it says here, we are capable of perceiving only a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. A quantitative analysis of the different wavelengths at which visible colors are perceived is presented in this article. All right. Now, anyone who's been here for a while, anyone who's been following me, probably is doing so because they know I'm giving you the unvarnished truth relative to ascension, this transitioning as as it's been called, as we're moving into a new earth, new dimension, new age. As I call this, the wrap up of the wrap up. All the accounts are getting cashed out and counted out now, and all the powers that be on both good and the bad side, they're all being forced to tip their hands, show their hand, play your hand, ante up. It's now or never. And I think a lot of people are getting a clear sense of this. And one of the things that's happening is that the veils in general, as we start raising our vibrations and start kind of moving up and lifting up, we find that we start seeing different things. Many of us, not everyone. This may not resonate with everyone. Take what you see and, take what you like and leave the rest, as it were. So, either this vibrates, this either resonates with you or it doesn't. But a lot of people have had this experience where, especially like if you look in the mirror or out of the corner of your eye, and when you put direct attention on it, it a lot of times goes away. But, it's your peripheral a lot of times more so, or in the shadows at night, these kind of things. When it's cloudy, people are seeing a whole lot of really weird stuff, just all kinds of across the board. And it's all perception, sure, yes, absolutely, up until you get to the point of realizing that perception is a logical trick we play on ourselves, that even logic is perception. Common sense, things make sense. What sense is that? Question mark. And if I present to you that logic is just one more of your senses, the common sense, which not everyone has, yet everyone has a logic. You talk to someone, you talk to people, if you get to where their first logical starting point is, you can kind of follow along. And it's a matter of trick of perception of where you start and the continuum as to whether or not you can follow along. And there is a boundary, a particular boundary within each spectrum, a spectrum of truth, if you will, a spectrum of words, spectrum of understanding, it on and on and on it goes. Your thoughts are magnetic, your thoughts are electric, a lot of them, your body feeling is magnetic, you know. And so a lot of where the perception is where, you know, how you define the perception of something is completely dependent on where you start looking for it. And part of the discussion, okay, so get back on track. All right. So part of the discussion here is of the Schumann resonances, and the Schumann spectrogram is knowing where on the scale of signals, of waves, does the Schumann resonances reside, in what part of it, and what is the extent and what is the boundary of the Schumann resonances. Okay, because these are harmonics, they're interference waves, they're harmonic waves that are caused by them interfering with themselves as they bounce around the world. Okay, pardon me, sorry about that. And I mean, oh good golly, I'm glad I said this was not a short video. Because one of the things that we're talking about is the wavelength. Okay, when we're talking about the frequency, we're talking about the frequency of a wavelength, okay, with these magnetics, more so than the electrics. And the magnetics, once it formalizes into a wave, form a wave that's bouncing on the globe, okay, not free floating through space, but has landed, bang, been captured by our ionosphere, transferred down into the lower part where we live with the oxygen, nitrogen, mostly nitrogen atmosphere, and starts congealing with that and starts bouncing around. That's when you have a wavelength, a true wavelength. And again, this is relative to the Schumann. All right. So here we're talking about, in this particular article here, we're talking about the wavelength of visible light, which is a higher place on the spectrum. Okay, just go back to our chart here. This is a high visible light is a higher place on the spectrum relative to, you know, the EMF. And so down here, again, as a quick reminder, the Schumann resonances start here at 0, basically 3, 2, 1. You have that, if you can see that. That's 10 to the third. Okay, and that's a 1 kilometer wave length. All right, so and this is in a second. All right, that's our time scale here, is measured on a second. So in a second, it's moved. That wave has moved 1 kilometer. Okay, 3 hertz. We have down here. This is 0 hertz, and then we have 3, approximately like right here. All right, so a 3 hertz, just as a reminder, a 3 hertz wavelength is at 100,000 kilometers, okay? 30 hertz is 10,000 kilometers, okay? 300 hertz is 1,000 kilometers. So 1,000 is a million. 10,000 is 10 million. 100,000 is 100 million meters. So down here is 100. That's 100 million meter. 3 hertz. It's moved at 3 hertz. It's moved that length of time. 100 million meters in 3 seconds. It's done that 3 times, right, at 3 hertz. You know, I'm not sure if I'm making this clear enough. It's a little complicated, but I think you're getting what I'm saying. That in a second at 3 hertz, it's moved that distance. It's 300 million meters. Okay, so that's where 3 hertz are, and then at 8 hertz, it's 800 million meters. Okay, so that's what the Schumann resonances are. When we're talking about 7.83, that's 783 million meters in a second. Okay, that's the 7.83 cycles per second. It's the wavelength of 783 million meters. Okay, I hope I'm not beating you with a dead fish here or whatever, but I just want to draw this analogy of the frequency. We're talking about frequency. It involves the length of the wave. Really important, wavelength. And so I'm giving you the comparison of where on the chart the Schumann resonances are. Because I love you, because I love you all, I am always looking at this, perceiving, percepting, presenting this from the viewpoint of the Schumann resonances. Okay, now onward and upward. All right, so let's get back to what the text is saying. We really do need to make our way through this. All right, we are capable of perceiving only a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. A quantitative analysis of the different wavelengths at which visible colors are perceived is presented in this article. Eyes love green. Okay. In bright condition, the human eye has maximum sensitivity. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Has maximum sensitivity for the 555 nanometer wavelength of light, which corresponds to the yellow-green color. Not coincidentally, it is also the color of fresh green foliage, and it is also the heart chakra color. This evolutionary adaptation probably helped our ancestors, who were hunter-gatherers, in spotting fresh food in the wild. Light and darkness become relative or subjective concepts when it dawns upon you that both exist only in relation to the limits of the perceptive facilities of the human eye. The electromagnetic spectrum is truly vast, extending from the high-frequency gamma rays emitted by radioactive elements to the long radio waves that transmit your daily radio programs. What we call visible light is a tiny window in the spectrum, while the perception of color is subjective to the optical perception abilities of the human species. The wavelength is an objective parameter that won't change. Not coincidentally, this visible light window matches with the optical window, which is the range of wavelengths that pass through Earth's atmosphere without attenuation or absorption. Isn't that interesting? Life on Earth has evolved to perceive in these wavelengths, as they are the only components of sun rays that do not get filtered out by the atmosphere. Not coincidentally, it says. Okay, all right. So this goes here. We got our chart here once again. Not going over and over that. The wavelength range, where are we? The wavelength range of electromagnetic radiation that falls between 380 nanometers and 750 nanometers constitute the visible light spectrum. 1 nanometer equals 10 to the 9th meter. These are the two limits beyond which the human eye cannot perceive any colors, as the biological mechanism in the retina, which makes color vision possible, does not respond to frequencies that have a wavelength greater than 750 nanometers and less than 380 nanometers. And remember, the nanometer is a negative. You see it before the negative. So everything, it's nano, micro, pico, all of those. As the pico number gets smaller, that means it's a bigger wave. With the Schumann, corresponding this. So pico, nano, and then I think micro. So the nano you have is to negative 12 or negative 9, right? I guess we're at there. And then this is maybe micro, and then the pico is negative 15. All right. So I'm still trying to remember all this myself. But just as relative scale, just so we're all kind of, all right. Yeah, I think, nano, micro maybe. Anyway. All right, so we're talking about here again. This is the different perspective. This is the advanced class. This is the ascension kind of dealio. I like to call the people who are actively involved in their ascension the crew members. Anyone who's known me long enough, or I have certainly responded that way to a number of people about the crew members. Those are the people that are awake and aware and know what's happening and are trying to usher other people in and trying to help other people, kind of awaken other people, and the size of it, the relative size doesn't matter. It's the fact that you're doing it, you're actively doing it, you know what your part is, you are not wondering, oh, what are we doing here? And any of that happy horseshit. No, like, what your plan is, what your place is, you're doing it. It's basically to help others, as we're kind of moving on and upward. All right, so let me get off text here for a minute. We're talking about the perception of the eyeballs, and we have also the third eye that works as well. So, in the people, if you're here, if you're following along, if you haven't given me a nasty comment or whatever, if you're following along, if you're one of the true people that this is meant for, you know what I'm talking about, that you start seeing all sorts of other stuff happening. And it may be questionable from other people, but oh no, you know it, you see it. And whether or not you can capture it on camera or whatever, it doesn't necessarily matter. You know that your consciousness is projected kind of through that third eye, and you can see stuff, legitimately see it, that's there. And other people are, they're complexified by it, but we know there's a higher consciousness that's involved in this. So part of it is, as things are kind of shifting out, the grosser, more matter-based of this stuff, the more igneous, we'll call it, of this gets broken down and moved out of the way. We start seeing stuff that was, well, let's face it, it's always been there. It's just been veiled by the veil of Maya. And what's happening is a lot of the machines that are very sensitive to invisible stuff, invisible power, invisible forces, a lot of that stuff is now showing things that have been around for a while, that have been veiled from human. The quarantine has been, the galactic quarantine has been kind of lifted, and humans are being allowed to see some stuff. And that's kind of the reason why I'm talking about it, is because that the veil is lifting, and it's time. it's time to start, talking about this, because quite honestly, this is the fun stuff. This is the fun shit. All of the stuff that's freaking people out and making go batshit crazy. Oh, that's the fun. Yeah, the fun's just getting started for me. I'll tell you that much. So when we start seeing, what are the limits of the organs? Like, okay, the eyes themselves actually may be able to see a greater range than, they're giving you the average. What the average can, that's just statistics. They're giving you the statistical normal of, our range here. Yet, you can perceive things that are there. It gets into the question of what is your feelings and what's kind of, what are your feelings, what are your perceptions, and what's actually there. And quite honestly, this is a world of illusion. It's all your perceptions at some point, or the majority of it. I have a functional perfection rate of 93%. So perhaps 93% of what's there isn't really there, but it's 7% that, the imagined 7% that really holds it all together. And if you can unravel that 7 mystical, magical, mythical, mutable 7%, that's a mutative factor. Everything is good up to 93%, and then after that, in order to get a higher percentage of purity, you got to fake it. Fill it with crap or fill it with hope. Up to you. All right, so that's part of what, like I said, I've mentioned this before, but that's where part of people are getting into trouble. And I would say that this is kind of 4D here, okay? And there is, 4, 5D, we're getting into here, this range here, that people who are vibrating at a higher rate can see kind of into the ultraviolet range. I would maintain. As part of it is it's not just what you see, but the sanity of what you see. If it's just you seeing it, and you're okay with no one else needing to, you don't have to prove it to anyone else for it to be part of your sanity. Yeah, like for me, I know weird, wacky shit happens that I can't explain. I don't need to. I don't need to logically be attached to what I see. And emotionally or logically attached to what I see. It's just a perception. It's part of the theater. So I would maintain that we're talking about 5 or 6D up here, and this down here is negative 4D when we're talking about these kind of waves. These happen. These are here. But they're invisible to your eye. Or are they? Could you see infrared? How like that's the question. So I don't know. So there is the statistical normal of these two ranges here, but for those who are awake and awakening, what can you see? Like, I don't know, it's just a question. All right. Okay, so the wavelengths, they're showing you the nanometers, and this is the range of the angstrom scale. I'm not going to go into the angstroms right now, but it's a range of, it's more a temperature rating, if I'm not mistaken. I would think that Kelvin scale, maybe the Kelvin is like the temperature rating. All right, so we're going to have to go into what the angstrom scale is at, but you can see the different range of colors here, the green. So this is the range of, the 550 range here of green. So, oh no, angstrom is just a different range within the meters there. All right. So, let's get back to our text. A rainbow is seen due to refraction of light through raindrops. Ergo, it is not coincidence that the spectrum described here is in the exact order of a rainbow. What would life be without colors? Imagine living in a black and white world. It would surely be dreary. Colors are our visual system's response to incident electromagnetic radiation. Boy, they do have a mechanistic look at this. The cells that are responsible for color perception are the cone cells in the retina, which is not that. Every basic color has a range of wavelengths providing gradation. Green extends from pale green to dark green. Blue extends from light to dark, and so on. There are certain colors like pink or purple which are not basic colors. These composite colors are formed due to a mixture of certain basic colors, that is, through mixing of visible light wavelengths. When sunlight is made to pass through a prism, it splits into component colors. As can be seen from the table above, violet color has the shortest wavelength and red has the longest. The colors of different objects perceived by our eyes depend on the light absorption and emission properties of those objects. There are many more colors that we see in the world around us besides the ones mentioned above. You may be wondering why they are not mentioned here. The reason is that those composite colors are made by a mixture of wavelengths of these different colors. A wave light packet consisting a mixture of all these basic color wavelengths appears white. Okay, relative endpoints. Okay, so getting close to the, or maybe not. The endpoints of the spectrum presented above are with respect to the human eye. Many animals can see beyond the human limits of electromagnetic wavelengths. There you go. Their visibility range extends into what we call the infrared or ultraviolet range. Bees can perceive in the ultraviolet range. In that sense, the visible wavelength limits are subjective or relative. What we see as colors are our optical systems or brain's response to a particular set of electromagnetic waves. There we go. So, wavelengths are an absolute concept, but colors can be subjective to the visual system. Okay, so that's the end of the article here. All right, I'm going this side. So, this was kind of a bunch longer than I had wanted. I'm getting close to the 20-minute mark, I think, with this, or 30 minutes, I don't know, whatever. Let me check. Oh, yeah, I'm close to the 30-minute mark. All right, so, this was, I just wanted to present this article, and this is from, where is it? This is from, again, sciencestruck.com, wavelength of visible light spectrum. Okay. All right, so thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time, your love and support, and I think because this was a long one, and there's probably like 2 of you that are still watching at this point. Oh, you know what we'll do? Let's see what this one is. This one was going to be for Roger Williams. He's a great... All right, so I was going to play music, but unfortunately I don't think you'd actually be able to hear it the way I had it configured. I have the capture software so that it was scanning the microphone, but not the kind of stereo mix. So I think we'll end it very soon. So this is just really quickly the today's Schumann, the 26th to the 28th, and we just want to point out these are lines of the amplitude. This is electrovolts. This is the Schumann spectrogram here. Okay, And you got to remember that the Schumann spectrogram is getting the electromagnetic radiation. Okay, so it's only getting its information from the antennas and not anywhere else. So if the antennas are not picking up, or the antennas are not recognizing that signal, or it's moving at a higher frequency than the antennas are able to get, the antennas are not going to be able to produce anything on the spectrogram. Okay. And so that's, I think that's a good way to kind of end it here today. And you can see the frequency. This is the wavelength here. Okay. And so in a second, this is the, we're talking about in a second, it's moving, the peaks of 23, it's 23, what is it? In a second, it's moved 23. Those the crest has moved 23 times within a second. That's kind of what this frequency here is telling you, right? Whereas this is only 8 of those crests have moved within a second. Right? So you see, people talk about the power here of this, but what you got to look at is, see this big ass hump there. The frequency here and the quality here go together, right? You don't have a frequency here of the amplitude, because that is your upright, that's your electric, okay? So your frequency here is of the quality, the magnetics, which roll around and around and around the Earth. And when we're talking about a wave that's 783 million meters length, that is a Schumann resonance wave. That's the size of the frequency of the Schumann resonance waves, is that 7. And then there's the next one is 1,401,000,000, like the next resonance up is what we're talking about. Or I guess as it's moving up, the wavelength is getting shorter. Sorry. As the wavelength is getting up, it's getting shorter. So 7.83 goes down to 141 million meters. Okay, so the first resonance is 783 million, and then the next, the first resonance, fundamental. Oh my God, it's such a tongue twister. The first harmonics resonance, 7.83. That's actually, 7,830,000 meters. That's the wavelength. Okay, like this is a basic concept of it, and I think it's might be too complicated at this point. I'm kind of wrapping my tongue around this. Hopefully I've explained it enough. My brain sort of shut off at the moment, so that's kind of my signal. I think I'm at the 33-minute mark anyway. All right, so if you like this, please comment, or if you don't like it, comment as well. That's fine, as long as you keep it respectable, and I will kind of respond to anything, and I appreciate the love, the comments, the support. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with me here. I appreciate this. These are some complicated things. I'm trying to work through and keep it simple for everyone, and if I've not kept it simple enough for you, I apologize. But comment, give me a comment, give me questions. I want to hear. I want to, and if you've hung out this long to the end of the video, thank you very much. I love you, and lots of hugs and kisses to you. I much appreciate it. Thank you.